Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and as of today, the day this video is coming out, I am 39 weeks pregnant and very eagerly awaiting the arrival of our newest addition to the family. As you can imagine, I'm feeling very ready to be done. um, as the week progressed this week, I just got more and more tired. But thankfully, at the beginning of the week, I did have a little bit of a surge of energy and was able to do some kitchen work for you that I can bring to you in this video. So we're going to do some really fun kitchen projects. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Backwoods Home Magazine. They have two magazines. There's Backwoods Home and Self-Reliance magazine. You guys know I've been talking about them for a couple months now. I started reading this publication over 15 years ago when we were still living in the suburbs and dreaming of our homestead. The publication's been around for 35 years and it's just full of really amazing information. And for all of my subscribers, if you check out the link in the video description, you can get an annual subscription to each of these for just $13 a year. That is quite a steal. So this would make a really good holiday gift. My latest edition of Self-Reliance came recently, and they had a wonderful article on homemade pasta. And so one of the projects I'm going to bring you in this video is doing the recipe out of this magazine. I was really eager to try it. So we're going to bring you that. We're going to do a little bit of canning. We're going to make some fruit leather, a couple other fun kitchen projects that I'm really excited to bring you in this video. So why don't we go ahead and get started? This edition of Self-Reliance magazine also had a wonderful article all about winter canning. You know, we do the bulk of our canning projects when the garden is growing or when we're actively in the process of growing protein sources that need to be canned up. But just because the growing season has ended, it doesn't mean that the preserving season ends. And as we find jars emptying from the pantry as we're using them, we just fill them with whatever we have available. I was using up the rest of my cranberries, and I've made cranberry juice for you guys many times, and I'll just link a video in the description that has some really in-depth information about canning cranberries and turning them into juice. But I just thought I would talk a little bit about some of the other canning projects that I plan to do here in the coming months. So we'll definitely be doing some carrots as potatoes go soft. The apples that we have in storage are going to be turned into applesauce and apple pie filling as I find that they start to go soft and don't necessarily have the best texture for raw eating anymore. And then I have a whole freezer full of meat, of like bones, tallow to render, things like that, that we'll be filling jars with because we are taking our two beef heifers in next week and we need to clear out some freezer space. So one of those whole heifers will go in the freezer, and the other one we will save all of the steaks and like the prime cuts of beef that we really like, and that will go in the freezer. And the rest of it we will be canning up. You know that our butcher I've mentioned before does commercial canning, so that's a huge blessing to us, and that has a lifespan of 5 years. So just finishing up that cranberry juice, I had a few cranberries left and I decided to put them in a pot with some frozen strawberries. I also have some frozen blueberries, and then I'm going to chop up some apples and add those to the pot, and we are going to make some fruit leather. It has been a while since I've made fruit leather, and I don't know that I've ever done this for you guys before. This is something my children really love. Since I got a freeze dryer in the house, fruit leather is one of the few uses of my dehydrator that I still use. I use it to make beef jerky and to make fruit leather, and so I had to pull it out of storage and get it all washed up. But before we could use the dehydrator, we had to make a fruit sauce. So I have all of that fruit in a pot on the stove, and we're just going to kind of simmer that and cook it down. Eventually, we'll hit it with the immersion blender and blend it into a nice, thick fruit sauce. That fruit leather or things like fruit roll-ups that you buy in the store, this is essentially all it is. It is fruit sauce that has had all of the moisture removed from it, and it turns it into fruit leather. So if you like yours super sweet, go ahead and add some honey or some sugar to your fruit sauce. I find that the fruit is enough. It is sweet enough just the way it is. So I made my fruit sauce one day and then ran out of steam. So I put it in the fridge overnight. The next day I got my dehydrator trays all ready and decided to fill them with that cooled down fruit sauce. I like to line my dehydrator trays with a little bit of parchment paper. This is how we're able to peel that fruit leather off of the trays. And when I'm putting the fruit sauce on the parchment paper, I have to remember that it will dry from the outside in. So if you make your outside edges of the fruit sauce thinner than the middle, you're going to end up with really over-dried edges, and the inside will still be tacky and wet. So you want to make sure that the edges are thicker and you have the thinnest part of your fruit leather in the center. And that is what we do to try to get it to dry out evenly in the dehydrator. I have an Excalibur dehydrator. I got this probably 15 years ago on a Black Friday sale. It has worked really well for us. You'll see when I put the lid on the front of it, the reason we got a good deal on it was because the logo was printed upside down, and that's why they were selling it for almost half price. But it has served my family well. Prior to having a freeze dryer, this is what we use to dry food, and it works really well. I just make sure to rotate my trays as the fruit leather is drying. Every hour or so, I just come and I rotate it 90 degrees so that because the heat source comes from the back, that will evenly distribute the heat and dry it out. It dried on 135 degrees and it took maybe 12 to 14 hours. And as you can see, then that will peel right off of the parchment paper. You can leave it on the parchment paper and cut it into fancy little rolls and tie them up. My kids will go through this so quickly that I just peel it off of the parchment paper and cut it and just throw it into a big Tupperware container, and the kids will grab at that and eat it over the coming days. I think this lasted maybe 24 hours for us. Another little project this week, making sure that all those apple cores don't go to waste. I have a half-gallon jar here, and I just added about a half cup of sugar to my apple cores. I'm grabbing out one of my mothers of vinegar. This is the colony of bacteria that ferments my homemade apple scrap vinegars. I'm just going to throw one of those into my jar here, add a little bit from a previous batch of apple scrap vinegar, and we're going to fill it the rest of the way with water. Put a breathable coffee filter on the top and set that aside. And it was just really easy. It took about 5 minutes to get this put together, and we'll set it in the kitchen. After 2 weeks, we'll strain out all the solids and then let it continue to ferment down in the cellar for about 6 more months, and we'll have an easy batch of vinegar. Now it is time to make our pasta. Like I mentioned, this issue of Self-Reliance magazine had great instructions here for just a simple egg noodle, and I wanted to try it out. I've been making pasta for many years. I've tried many different recipes and thought this one was worth trying out. So we did 3.5 cups of an all-purpose flour here, and then you just make a little well in the center of it. And to that we're going to add 4 eggs. The recipe did suggest that you use jumbo eggs. I don't have any chickens that are currently laying jumbo eggs, so we're using regular sized eggs. Adding 1 teaspoon of salt to that, and then as I'm forming my dough together, it said that if you were using regular sized eggs and you needed more moisture, just add a little bit of water to your dough here until it is workable. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just really working this with my hands. I'm going to use the dough scraper at one point, and I'm just adding a little bit of water here and there until I get it to the perfect texture where it's going to form together and make a nice, soft, pliable dough ball. The article in the magazine had ideas for adding different veggies. I'm gonna, next time I make this, I think I'm gonna add some freeze-dried spinach powder, or maybe even some carrot powder or beet powder to make my pasta different colors. I'm really looking forward to this winter experimenting with homemade pastas, and I'll make sure to bring you guys along for that ride, probably during the Pantry challenge. Pasta is one of those things that's really easy to make and it tastes so much better than store-bought pasta, but it's one of those convenience items I've just fallen into the trap of relying on. And so once during the pantry challenge we run out of the pasta that I have purchased, I'm going to work on making some more homemade pastas, and not just these gluten-based pastas, but I'm really interested in gluten-free pastas because they're really expensive to buy. I buy the Tinkyata brand from Azure Standard, and if I could make that at home, I would save so much money. So once we got our dough all formed together in a nice soft ball, we are going to cover it in our plastic wrap and let it sit and rest for 1 hour and continue to soften. After that hour had passed, I was doing some other little kitchen projects. I was able to peel that plastic wrap off. I floured the surface of my counter here, and we are just going to knead this dough for a little bit, get it nice and soft before we're going to start rolling out our pasta dough. Now, when I've made pasta in the past, I have just rolled it out with a rolling pin, and I used my pizza cutter and just cut it into strips. Now, I think it was 2 years ago, I bought an actual pasta roller and cutter, and I've only used it one other time. And so I'm experimenting with it on this day and just trying to figure out, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how big do my balls of dough need to be to fit through the roller. And I think I settled on it. And warning, make sure you wear an apron if you have a big pregnant belly and you're working with flour like this. I made a mess of my dress and definitely should have had an apron on, but that's okay. It'll all wash out. So the first step was taking the dough and rolling it out into these long flat sheets and just making sure after each time I rolled it and folded it, I floured it a little bit so that it wouldn't stick. And we just want to have nice, thin, flat, even sheets of pasta. And after I did that first step to all of my little balls of dough, then we can roll them through the second part. And I will link this pasta roller in the video description. It has two options to make more of like a linguine noodle, and then it has a smaller setting for more of like a spaghetti type noodle. But I decided to do thicker linguine noodles for this because I was going to make a chicken and noodle, and you like a thicker noodle in that meal. So you really don't have to be intimidated by this pasta making process. The recipe that the Self-Reliance magazine gave me turned out great. I would say getting the dough put together before it rested took me maybe 20 minutes, and then rolling it out like this maybe took me another 25 minutes. I could hang the noodles to dry if I was going to preserve them. I just decided to make these little nests and leave them on the counter until I was ready to boil them for dinner. We're going to use these tonight. I grabbed 2 quart jars of a chicken soup base that I had canned earlier this summer with you guys during my canning challenge. We put both of those quarts on the stove to warm up, and then I'm just taking those little nests of noodles that I had made and I'm putting them in my pot of boiling water to cook. I have actually frozen those little nests of noodles before, just like that, in the freezer to preserve them before. If you don't want to hang them to dry, you can freeze them just like that and then pull them out when you want to make them, and they work just like this. Just add them directly to your pot of boiling water and you'll have some pasta. So we just let those boil for maybe 7 to 10 minutes until they're nice and soft and cooked through. I poured them into my baking dish here. They are looking lovely. And then we're just going to pour those 2 quarts of chicken base on top there. I'm just going to sprinkle some extra salt and pepper and parsley over the top. And this was a really quick and easy comfort meal on a really cold day. It dropped down this week. The temperatures got to a high of 17 degrees one day. So we needed warm comfort food like this. And there's just something about those homemade noodles that taste so much better than the store-bought. The kids really love this. So thank you to Self-Reliance magazine for providing the amazing recipe. We will definitely be making this again, and I will be experimenting more in the future. The next project this week was making some fruit gummies as snacks for the children. I just thought I would spoil them one day. My fruit gummy recipe, for every cup of fruit juice I use, I do 3 tablespoons of gelatin. And depending on how sweet the juice that you're using is, you can add a little bit of honey or sugar to it. I used half orange juice, which is really sweet, and the half was my unsweetened home canned cranberry juice, which isn't very sweet at all. So the two balance each other out. I did add a little bit of honey, you'll see, to the mix after I add my gelatin, but I have made this before for you guys, so I'm not going to dwell on the recipe for you. What I did want to talk to you about is how important it is to have the ability to make these kinds of snacks and treats for your children if you're going to be doing a pantry challenge. And you guys know I'm not just preparing to have a baby, I'm preparing for the big pantry challenge that I do every January and February. It's called the Three Rivers Challenge, and I've done videos all about it for you guys, and I'll link one in the video description. It's a really fun challenge where people come together on Instagram and YouTube and other social media outlets during the months of January and February, and we use that hashtag Three Rivers Challenge to share about how we are using up the items in our pantry to kind of clear them out, cycle through them, and make sure that we're not wasting foods. Get all of those foods that are kind of tucked away in the back of the pantry or in the bottom of your freezer and find a way to use them before they go bad. But avoiding the grocery store, one of the hardest things about doing that, particularly when you have children, is not having access to snacks. A lot of us don't keep tons and tons of snacks in the pantry. We keep our staple foods, our beans and our grains and our nuts and our seeds and all of that. And it's typically those convenience foods and those snacks that we buy when we go to the grocery store. So what are you going to do when you're not going to the grocery store for a couple of months? We need to have the ability to make tasty snacks for your children. So things like these gummies become really valuable, and I can make it out of the home canned juice that I have in my pantry and the bulk gelatin that we have. I buy these silicone molds from Amazon. We have them in all different shapes, and these are the kind of treats that make it feel not like a challenge for the children. We can make things like potato chips as long as we have potatoes down in the cellar and some tallow to fry them up. We can even make corn chips. We can make all sorts of baked goods and things like that. And so just because you're doing a pantry challenge doesn't mean you have to deprive yourself. It just takes a little extra effort to make the treats like this. These gummies just went into the fridge. It took them maybe 45 minutes to solidify and set, and then we could pop them out of their silicone molds. If you want to save the time and not go to all the trouble of using the dropper to fill all those silicone molds, you could just pour your juice and gelatin mixture into a big baking dish and cut it just like you would Jell-O. But there's something about these little shapes that the children absolutely love, and it's just something special. It's an extra step that I take every now and then when I have the time. So if you guys are going to be joining me on the Three River Challenge, if it's your first year doing it, make sure you check out the video that I'm going to link in the description. It'll talk all about how you can participate, what the rules are, and how you go about sharing your stuff so that other channels can find you during the challenge and be inspired. I will be, through the month of January and February, bringing you a bunch of meals videos and just showing you what we're eating from our pantry and freezers every day of the month. These are some of my favorite videos to make for you guys, and so I'm looking forward to doing that. But for now, it's time for me to start winding down here. You've probably been able to tell during this video that I've been kind of out of breath. I'm going to go rest for a little bit. Lord willing, there will be a baby here before next Sunday's video comes, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you a lovely birth announcement, and depending on when the baby is born, maybe even a birth video before next week. If not, I will try to have something available for you on Sunday, but I can't promise anything. It just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. And then I might take a week break. Adam is home from work during the end of December, and we're just going to enjoy the new baby and being home together as a family and all of the fun traditions that we do together during the month of December. So if I take a week off from posting, that's what we are doing. And as always, I will update you on that in the community tab. And then we will be back ready to go that first week of January with the Pantry Challenge videos. So, hopefully, all of you guys are excited for all of the festivities and holiday traditions that your family enjoys during the month of December. We are really looking forward to sharing the birth of our newest baby with you guys, and we thank you all for being here and sharing in that joy with us. Have a blessed week, friends. We will be back just as soon as we can. Bye.